Thanks for jumping on to our EV. Well, I guess we didn't update this slide, but EV buyers hacks and tips. So essentially, what we're going to be talking about in this go around in our in this little, we do these town halls every once in a while. We do this as a courtesy for the entire EV community and also people that are aspiring to be part of that EV community. So individuals that are looking to buy a used vehicle, used EV, we understand, as most people have been since day one. We'll talk about our backgrounds and kind of our EV expertise and, who are these people? Why should I be listening to them? We'll talk about who we are in here in a second. But the point of this is if you're shopping for an electric vehicle, we understand that this is new technology for a lot of you, for everybody, especially if you haven't owned one. And even if you have owned one, there is now significantly amount more types of variations of electric vehicles out there that you might not be familiar with. Um, we're crazy people that love this stuff. So we just learned this for free time and for pleasure, personal pleasure. And now we are here to tell you all what we know, at least what we think we know. Maybe we're right, maybe we're wrong. A lot of these are going to be our opinions and our subjective, what we kind of think and what we learned over time. But nonetheless, we're going to give you 100% transparency of what we think and kind of give you what to look out for, maybe what to buy, what not to buy, maybe answer any questions that people have, so on and so forth. So let's get on going. This is Team XCare. Well, here, I'll pass it off to Brett to introduce well, let me introduce myself first, and I'll pass off to Brett to introduce everybody else. Let's do that. My name is Milad Davuti. I'm the COO of Accelerate. I'm a long-time former Tesla employee of 7 years. I worked at the company from 2011 to 2018. Early days, started my career selling roadsters at the tail end. Saw Model S in prototype mode, starting in concept, prototype, beta, and then eventually we started delivering them about a year later. I went on to start and help create the used vehicle and trade-in program for the company and expanded that globally all over the world, dabbled in a site like new market entry, solved some international business problems that we had, and eventually kind of solved uh, uh, eventually saw the rollout of Model 3. Since then, I joined up with Accelerate, since, just kind of a background on who we are, which we'll go in a little bit. We do leasing and financing for battery electric vehicles. We also started XCare, which is a warranty product for electric vehicles. But Brent, how about you talk about yourself and maybe introduce the rest of the team?
Awesome. My name is Brent Seavey. I've been in and around the automotive space since 1997. If that dates me, that's great. Joined Tesla in 2015. I was recruited partially to help start the remarketing and used car department at Tesla. That's where Milad and I became friends. At that point, we built up the remarketing and used car department there, and then I joined Accelerate about a year after Milad had joined, and helping to build XCare, which is our warranty product for battery electric vehicles. I'll talk for Libby. She is off camera this morning. She is taking a well-deserved weekend off. Libby Sullivan worked with me in the used car department here in the Midwest. Amazing resource, helps a lot of our clients who are going through claims if there are any hiccups or anything. She jumps right in. She's an amazing individual that I'm very glad is on board with us. And now I'd like to introduce Carrie Clark and let you talk a little bit about yourself, Carrie.
Yeah, so, well, it says it right there, but spent a little over 3 years with Tesla. Started out in Southern California at one of the higher volume stores, just helping with how does sales work and kind of growing that. And then got what I thought was a prank call one night from somebody who stammered and sounded like they were Elon. Come to find out it was Elon, and he asked me, aka told me I was going to Australia to start the market there. First employee on the ground, had a lot of learning on how do we grow the market and kind of what do we do from the ground up there. Set a high bar, left there, and then also helped with development of the UK, back and forth between the US and the UK for about a year and a half. And been now, well, did some other things after that, traditional automotive, helped with Jaguar Land Rover. Did some consulting with them, trying to help them understand how to launch the I-Pace correctly, but they didn't listen to everything that I had to say, which is okay. So still a cool car for the marketplace and the segment that it's after. But I've been here now for about a year. Known Milad and Brent for, gosh, more than a decade. Worked kind of in parallel but afar at the same time at Tesla, and just really loving the day to day here, helping people protect their investment and really stay in the cars that they love. So yeah, but I want to hand it off to Dan. Dan is awesome, and I'll let him tell you how awesome he is.
Oh man,
That's how
tough
awesome.
it's a tough act to follow right there. But no, it's kind of crazy looking at all of this, the fact that we've been doing this for over a decade now, as kind of specialists in this really niche space, but really gratifying to be in front of you, to be able to provide, as much of our knowledge as we can, and impart this on you, and hopefully help you make a good informed decision as you're stepping into the EV space. I've had the pleasure of working alongside Milad for, gosh, almost 7+ years while we were together at Tesla, building out really the Texas and the rest of the North American market. So it's funny when often I talk to a lot of clients and think through what our key differentiators are, and you're looking at it, right? This is it right here. It's our core team, the knowledge that we've been able to amass over this past decade, and that hopefully y'all can take some value from. But yeah, happy to be here with you. I'm always at your disposal if you need anything.
Awesome. Thank you all. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, just a little bit about the company. I really want to focus more on the segments here, or why buy an EV. Let's talk about that. Sorry. Reverse course. So why buy an electric vehicle? I think everyone here, the purpose of this is you're shopping for an EV. We want to make sure that we kind of guide you on the right decision, what to look out for, what are some of the options. But hopefully everyone already understands kind of the benefits of going electric. We've all been driving electric for 10+ years now. I would be doing it longer if I could. But it's obviously superior technology across the spectrum here, even in even in the non-Tesla brands, it's more like, say, Volkswagen or Nissan or Jaguar or Porsche, or no matter which manufacturer, Ford, GM, no matter which manufacturer we're talking about, they usually put the best of their technology that they have available in their EV lines. That's something you're going to see across the board. And as usually as kind of your base frame, and then it goes up from there. So you're always getting the best of vehicle technology that you can possibly get. And that's not just limited to, say, the powertrain and the actual vehicle structure itself, but even the infotainment and some of the cool creature comforts that are involved with the vehicle. There's minimal maintenance. You don't have thousands of moving parts that are exploding every single minute in order to drive and propel your car forward. An electric motor typically has 2 parts, one exterior component and one interior component that moves while the exterior component stays still. It's called the rotor, that one that moves, and a stator that stays still. There's literally one part inside of an electric motor. There's roughly, I think, 700 on average moving parts in an internal combustion engine, and roughly 2,000 to 3,000 parts in a transmission. Why do I know that? Because I'm crazy and I'm a huge auto nerd, and I actually have looked these things up to understand how many moving parts there are in a gasoline powertrain. At-home charging. Imagine if you had a gas station in your house. That's what it is. I mean, literally. I mean, if you had a gas station at home, how often would you be filling up gas outside of your home? Probably when you're not coming back home. That's exactly the situation with an electric vehicle. You start every single day with a full charge. Unless you're leaving home indefinitely, that's the only situation where you're charging outside of home, assuming you have home charging. We're going to talk a little bit about that. It's obviously a smoother and quieter ride. Once again, no gasoline engine, no combustion happening. It's very clean. It's very smooth. One thing about used EVs, I'll say, if you drive a used electric vehicle with 100,000 miles, it's going to be weird because it's going to feel very similar to a car that's brand new. There's not a lot that's propelling your car forward. It's the same way that an electric toothbrush, the 10-year-old electric toothbrush, if it works, it's probably going to work very similar as it did, assuming you got new bristles, the same way that you did 10 years prior. Electric vehicle is kind of the same way in principle. So it's really cool where you don't see that kind of degrade. You don't see jerkiness or something like that as the car gets older like you do in a gas car. So it's really awesome. Performance. This is why I got into it. I didn't get into it for the environmental purposes. I got into it for performance. They're faster, 100% torque at 0 RPM. 0 to 60 times are way more significantly higher. Driving on highway speeds, on-ramping on highways, way easier. If you're more in control of your car, and because of that, it kind of feels safer as far as operationally, but fundamentally, as far as engineering-wise, it is safer because you don't have a huge entire gasoline engine in front of you that is not a huge iron block just headed towards you in a front-end collision. That's all crumple zone. I personally have been in a very hardcore accident in my Model 3, and I went away with one single scar on my finger because of the airbag deployment. And me and my dog should probably have been in the ICU. I'm very thankful that that did not happen. My dog probably would have, unfortunately, not be here anymore. It's one of those things, we all have stories. We all either have them ourselves or we know personal stories from customers over the last 10 plus years that we've been involved in this. It is quite incredible how safe these cars are. Volvo was always the safest brand up until Tesla came, and then just wiped that out of the water. So let's get into the core of what we're trying to talk about and make sure that everyone gets all their questions answered. And hopefully, and as we go, since it's kind of a smaller group, feel free to ask questions out loud, or you can chat them in the chat for people who just joined up recently, who might not have heard that previously. Just submit it in the chat and we'll get someone to answer, and we'll also call them out during a couple segments throughout. So some of the big things to kind of consider: charging strategy, right? So like I was saying before, you have your day-to-day and then you have your long distance. Your long distance, my wife and I, we drive road trips all the time. We typically always drive an EV. Well, not typically, always drive an EV. Even though we have a gas car, that is not really for that. It's easier. It's a lot less stress-free. If you're using autopilot, there's nothing really comparable to it. You're just kind of driving straight for a few hundred miles. Supercharging stops, if you're driving a Tesla, a Lucid, or a Ford, you can utilize the Tesla supercharging network, where you can plug in, 15, 20, 25 minutes max. You're pretty much good to go on your way. You always want to look at the battery size and maximum range. There's a lot of different battery variations. We're going to talk about that as the trims have differed over the years, especially when you're talking about Tesla. If you're looking at some of the more legacy manufacturers like GM and like Porsche or Jaguar, they have different, the trims and the battery ranges have changed over time. So whatever you see today, don't assume that that's what the same range was 2 or 3 years ago. It could have been vastly different. As the technology iterates significantly, the obsolescence cycle is high in vehicle technology when it comes to electric vehicles. So what you see as a new on a 2024 model, if you're looking at the same model in 2022, be very cautious. It might not be the same. Make sure you look at these types of things. We'll go into that as well. Hardware limitations. This is a much bigger one with Tesla because it's older and there's been a lot more iterable cycles out there. But in the Tesla world, or the used Tesla world, there are certain things that you can't have due to hardware limitations, whether that is the speed of supercharging or the functionality or software ability for autopilot can possibly be limited. Even small things like, does my seats have heated seats or ventilated seats, right? So there's going to be certain hardware limitations. These are kind of the only cars, at least of all the EVs, that have over-the-air software updates. They're really the only vehicles that truly, and I'm not just saying this to say it, it really does get better over time. I have countless examples of this. I drive a Cybertruck now. That Cybertruck was definitely crappier 6 months ago as it is today. I had one of the first Model S's in 2022. That car was definitely crappier when I first got it than it was the day I sold it. They do get better. They get better through software enablements and software updates. They unlock things that you didn't even know your car could do, that they kind of thought about that ahead. So charging at home. Brent, you want to take this one?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a lot of different ways you can charge at home, and a lot of it just kind of depends on how you use the car. For instance, if your daily use is 10, 15 miles, really it's not a big deal to use the charging cable that came with the car on 110. If your daily commute isn't that much, I was just commenting before the call with the guys that I have a 2-year-old car with 10,000 miles on it. I work from home. I really don't take long trips that often, and so my biggest charging need is right here in the house, and I have 240, but I could use the 110 quite easily and comfortably. But for most people that want the option of quickly charging their car, running a 240 line to your garage is important. If you already have the electrical box in your garage, your fuse box or breaker box in the garage, you have a much simpler setup than other people in setting up this charging. So I would definitely, if you're considering buying an EV, simply talk to an electrician, have somebody come out, take a look, and kind of re-up you on your options. Now, there are some folks, their laundry room is very close to the garage, and there are some ways that you can actually share the high voltage plug with your dryer in the laundry room if that's close to your garage parking space. So there are a lot of different ways that you can charge your car. Do recommend talking to an electrician, getting a kind of solid idea of your individual space. But if you're a very light user, you may be very, very easily adaptable to using the 110. I had 110 in my garage with my first Tesla for about 2.5 years, and most of the time it was just fine. But my 240 now is definitely a step above. So recommend you talk to someone and get a good solid grip on that.
And something to note, there's like they have a PDF, like Tesla has a PDF of the name of 1450, like something you can actually hand to an electrician so they know exactly what to quote you. A big company that I'm pretty sure is nationwide, that I have used them a couple times now, that I'm a huge fan. Customer service is a big thing for me. I became friends with these people when they came to our house. Like that was the type of relationship that it was. But it's Smart Charge America. I want to say they're everywhere. If not, they're in a vast amount of space. But they know exactly what to do. As Brent said, if you have a breaker in your garage, it doesn't cost that much money. It's like a couple $100. But just so kind of rule of thumb, if you're thinking like, well, I wonder how much it costs for me. There's two major dependencies here. Do you have amperage available, additional amperage available to power this, which is either going to be like a 50 amp breaker specifically for that 240? And then two, if you do, great. You don't really have to do anything extra. That's pretty great. If you don't, then you're going to have to do something extra, which is going to cost significantly more. And then two is the trail. If you have to trail the plug really far, then that's where the second biggest variable for cost comes into play.
And let me piggyback on something Milan just said. If you only have 30 amps left on your breaker panel, or even 20 amps, you can still use the Tesla charger, because the Tesla charger has the ability internally to set for 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 amps. So if you have less available, the Tesla charger is really an ideal solution if you're, of course, getting a Tesla, because of the fact that it can be internally regulated that way.
Yeah. Also, something else that a lot of people don't say, this is like the quiet part out loud. If you have 30 amps available and you're like, and it's going to cost you $3,000 or $5,000 to up it to another 10 amps to get you 40, it's not worth it. Just stick with the 30. You're not going to get your money back for that. Don't spend the extra money.
Absolutely fine. You'll still replenish your car overnight for most use cases.
Yeah, exactly. So on the road, this one is incredibly important. Once again, I want to say, if you are looking at a Tesla, a Rivian, or a Ford, you do have access to the Tesla Supercharger network. This is a huge difference, and there's a huge ownership difference, and no one can stress this lightly. If anyone says otherwise, they either don't know or they're just simply lying to you. The Tesla Supercharger network is incredibly vast. You can go coast to coast without even thinking where you're going to charge, right? Like, they're just everywhere. So you can go coast to coast, you can drive internationally, you can drive all the way down from the Canada all the way down to south of Mexico, although I probably wouldn't recommend driving that route. But but you can, is the point of what I'm saying. You can, and I've done it myself in 2018. This is also 6 years ago. In 2018, I left Chicago and drove all the way down to Houston without doing a bit of planning. And then on the way back, I tried to use country roads just to make it harder on myself. And that was also easy. So, and that was 6 years ago. Now we have I think 3 times the amount of superchargers today than it was 6 years ago. So no problem at all. If you're in Texas, they're at all Buc-ee's. It's awesome. I mean, I can't tell you how amazing it is to stop at Buc-ee's and plug in. If you're anyone else that is not a Tesla, Ford, or Rivian, you're going to be utilizing third-party networks. The biggest one's going to be Electrify America. There's some other ones. Rivian's kind of building their own. There's ChargePoint that's out there. CCS is the name of the high-speed DC fast charge. That's the thing that you're going to want to use when you're on the road. There's another charge cable that's called a J1772, 1772. Yeah. And that is a level 2 charger. So that's like plugging in for many hours, like an overnight charge to get you back to full. The CCS is the DC fast charge. That's the 30-minute charge, gets you most of your battery. You're good on your way, up to 30. So they're vast. They are in a lot of places. Reliability is the question. There are countless amounts of stories out there that are not false. They are real, unfortunately, where you go up and maybe only half of them work, maybe one of them work, maybe none of them work. Maintaining these is where they have lacked. And unfortunately, that's the stark difference between the Tesla Supercharger network I've been using since the day it was released. I think I can count on one single hand over the past 10 plus years how many times I went to go plug in and that particular stall didn't work. And if it didn't, there's like 30 other ones for you to use, right? So it doesn't, it's like going to a gas station, like, oh, this pump doesn't work, but it's okay. There's another pump. That's just right there and it works. That's not how the non-Tesla superchargers work. Usually Electrify America stations don't have more than like 3 of those. So while a Tesla supercharger site typically has, now I think they have at least like 8 to sometimes 30. The one, our nearest, one of our Buc-ee's has like 40 of them. I mean, it's a lot. So
in California.
and in California, Kettleman City has like 100 of them. So they're just becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, and they plan for this where owners are typically traveling. So that's why they kind of map that accordingly.
And one quick point to emphasize here is that this all started, 10 years ago when the supercharger net was being rolled out. You're talking about peak capacity of 90 kilowatts. Today, 250 plus. And so I think it's always worth understanding that what we're talking about is what's currently available, but Tesla never stands in place. They're always iterating, always improving on the technology. So you'll just see these get faster and more reliable and be widespread over time.
It used to be 45 minutes from a charge 0 to 80%, and now it's 25 minutes 0 to 80%.
Yeah, it's crazy fast. My last trip down to Florida, it was just crazy fast.
Yeah. So not saying the other supercharger or the other DC fast chargers don't do that. They do. They go up to 250 a lot. Some of them up to 350, even though most cars can't even charge up to 350. So I don't even know what that's really for. But it's just reliability. How do you know whenever you get there, especially when you're hundreds of miles away from home, is that one going to work? The connection between the site and what you're seeing in your car is not always one-to-one. So just something to keep in mind.
I would just say that basically the end of this slide is if you do a lot of road tripping, buy a Tesla Ford Rivian.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
A lot of road tripping, and you've got home charging available too. You can pretty much buy whatever you want. But if you do a lot of road tripping, a lot of packing the family in and going places, buy a Tesla Ford Rivian. Done deal.
I cannot agree more. Okay, so let's talk about the F-150 Lightning real quick. I think a lot of us are actually really big fans of the F-150 Lightning. I think it's a lot of bang for your buck, especially right now with the used pricing for an F-150 Lightning.
Great truck.
Oh man, great truck.
Yep.
I mean, it really drives like any other F-150. It's just smoother and faster. So it's like you're driving a Raptor, except it looks more normal and it's more utilitarian. There's more things. So let's go through it. There's 4 different major trims here. The Pro is more the lower range, 240 miles. This is more meant to be like a work truck for most people. It's got a plastic front fascia just so you can beat on it a little bit more. It's got a little bit smaller towing capacity. This is really meant for, like I said, for people that want to use it as a work truck. The XLT, I would say this is where the consumer-based trucks, XLT and higher. So if you're familiar with F-Series trucks, and you say, I really enjoy, I have a F1, let's just say I have a 2022 F-150 Lariat right now, but I'm just sick and tired of all the gas that I'm using. I want to just drive the Lightning because why not, right? XLT is probably going to be a good bet. It has that same high-end infotainment system that you see on the gas variations of the F-150. You get 320 miles of range, you get 10,000 pound towing capacity. There's also onboard charging that you can use. The Lightnings can also go vehicle to home, which is a huge thing. If the grid ever comes down, the literal car can power your house. I mean, that's a huge peace of mind, especially if you're in an area with spotty grid system, which if you're in Texas, then I would say definitely look out for that. Or California, I mean, or now kind of everywhere, because energy is a problem everywhere we are, right? So, I mean, if you're immune to it now, you're probably not immune to it later, hopefully. Hopefully we are, but because we need to be better and solve these problems. The Lariat variation of the F-150 Lightning, this is the trim where you start to look at more of the technology that they're going to put inside the car. So they have a huge 17-inch touchscreen in the center console. You have Copilot Assist, which is really their like autopilot system that does work pretty good. It's hands-off driving. You also get an upgraded sound system, which is really nice. The seats are a little bit more like the work truck. They're a little bit more normal. So the interior is not as high end, but you get a lot of the high end technology inside of the vehicle until you step up to the Platinum. Then you go high end interior. Then it's more like a luxury truck. You get all the trimmings that you get in the Lariat, with all the new technology. But now you get like really nice leather seats. There's contour massage seating, heated and ventilated seats. I mean, it is a luxury truck, and it truly is. Beautiful car. Any single one of them are really amazing. I gotta say. And now that they use that, now you can use the Tesla supercharging network with an adapter. So if you do get one of these, you got to make sure you just get one of those adapters. Doesn't cost a lot. But you can go anywhere. You can go anywhere, do anything. It's just such an amazing bang for your buck value, and we couldn't recommend it enough, honestly. Great truck. So let's switch back over to the Tesla world. The point of this is not for you to memorize. The point of this is kind of to confuse you, because this is crazy.
There will be a test.
There will be a test after this. This is really insane. These are all the different trim levels that have evolved, and I'm pretty sure there's like a few that are missing in here, but these are all the various trim levels that have evolved over the years since Model S was created. 2012 is when Model S was released. And these are all signify battery sizes. 40 kilowatt hour battery, which were not actually true 40s. They were actually 60s that were limited. And then we had 60s and 85s. Then we had a performance 85. The 85 went 265 miles on a charge. The 60 went 200 or 180 or something like that. I can't even remember anymore. And then in 2014, we had October of 2014, we saw the dual motors were released. We had the next gen interior seating was also released at the tail end of 2014. Tesla doesn't go by model years. They don't wait until the next calendar year to release new items. They just do it incrementally as time goes by. So if you're buying a newer variation of a Tesla, literally at any point, it's going to be better than a used variation. And it doesn't matter what the model year is. They just incrementally make it better and better over time. Now you have the 70D, went a little bit longer, but now you have dual motor variation. Then it went to the 75, 85, 75D, 85D. Not a lot of good product planning. We weren't really thinking ahead. We were really thinking in the now. What do we do now so we can sell cars and make sure this company survives? Then in 2016, 2017, things started shifting a little bit. Like, okay, I think we're good. I think we're good. We're going to make this a little more normalized. That was kind of what we tried to do. And then I think end of 2016 came, and you're like, okay, there's demand problems. We'll just recreate a 60D and 70D. That's why you see those asterisks, because they weren't actually real 60s or 70s. They were all 75s that were just software limited, that you could actually pay money to get more range just over the air. And then you had other ones. And then now we have what we have today, which is much more consumer friendly, I would say. Dual motor. Now there's variations on standard range. There's variation on long range. You're going to have range differentiations between the two. Dual motor. Now there's also rear wheel drive variations that just got released a couple days ago in the Model 3. Amazing product value. 360 miles on a charge for 35 grand. I mean,
yeah.
Also, just to add, there was a software unlock for rear wheel drive Model Y the other
50
day.
miles, right?
Yeah.
For $1,600. So you pay $1,600 and then you unlock 50 miles of range. So Tesla does these things every once in a while, right? This is kind of what we were talking about earlier. The cars kind of get better over time. In these examples, you got to pay for it to be better over time. Most examples, almost all the other examples, you don't have to pay for it to get better over time. They just come to you. But the point of this is there's a lot of variation. We can't go through all of them. So if you're looking at something, this is why we're a resource to you. Reach out to us. We can give you our point of views and what we think, and we can answer more precise questions. It's just too much to go through every single one. How do you tell? Badging, for the most part. Sometimes they don't have badging, so you also kind of have to take that in consideration. They didn't always have badging. Sometimes they did. Sometimes they didn't. Sometimes you could opt out of having badging. This is all very confusing. But inside of the car, if you're like, say you're looking at a piece of inventory at a dealer lot or something like that, or a private sale, go under the controls on the bottom and you ask them to do this. Hit controls on the bottom left of the touchscreen, hit software, take a picture. That'll tell you everything you really need to know as far as what type of trim it is. If you want to go deeper, in that same, there's additional vehicle information. Click that, take a picture. That'll tell you everything. So everything you need to know. That way, no one can lie to you. Don't ever go off of what the seller is telling you, because they might just be wrong. They might not be lying to you. Maybe they are, but maybe they're not. Maybe they're just wrong. They simply don't know because it's complicated and this is not their job to know, unfortunately, even though it should be their job to know, but it's not. That's a whole different conversation for another day. So now you have variations of Model S. From the outside, this is a very good way of kind of like immediately looking at pictures and understanding kind of the differences here. There's some visual differences that are that you can easily tell. 2012 to 2015, that big black nose cone. That's how you know it was made prior to middle of 2016. It wasn't exactly 2016. There are 2016s that have those nose cones. They're just made earlier, like January through June or something, or March is whenever they were actually manufactured.
July, they came out with the new fascia.
Yeah, July they came out with a new fascia. Inside of the car, which you kind of can see, but not really, in 2012 to 2014, it's the old school interior. These are the very first vehicles Tesla ever made. End of 2014 to 2016, newer generation interior, way more buckety seats, a little bit more comfortable if you like tighter seating arrangements. If you're a larger person, maybe not more comfortable. So take that into consideration too. Maybe the older style seats probably a little bit more comfortable, but we'll go into that. Then they changed how buckety they were in 2016, which made it a little bit more relaxed and a little bit more comfortable. And this was end of 2016 going into 2020. Now you see this flat nose cone, right? Or there's no nose cone. It's just a bumper and it's a painted front fascia. The interior was pretty much mostly the same. They made incremental improvements over the years. They got better quality. We got better manufacturing for the most part. Fit and finish was just a lot better in the later years. Great bang for your buck here in this segment. I would say 2016, 2020, amazing bang for your buck when it comes to Model S. We'll go into Model X here in a little bit. And then 2021, huge fundamental shift. Even though it might look the same to a lot of people, it is not. It's not the same at all. I mean, it's a fundamentally different car. Exterior-wise, it's also different. Even though they look similar, every panel is actually slightly different than the one previously. So as you can see, the front does look different. The light structure is different. The nose cone is slightly different. It's a little bit more aggressive. The rear end is a little bit more wider. It's much more of a sportier vehicle. The interior, fundamental shift. This was the announcement of the yoke. I had a yoke. I absolutely hated it. I thought it was absolutely stupid. I swapped it out for a wheel immediately the moment I could. People have different subjective opinions about that. Once again, these opinions are only my own and no one else's. I personally don't like the yoke. The steering ratio is not any different. So you still have a couple rotations of the steering wheel. Now you just don't have a top of the steering wheel. If you like that, go for it. That was annoying for me. So the wheel made more sense. Nonetheless, you do have an option of getting the steering wheel. You're not always stuck with the yoke. So even if you get one with a yoke because it's in your price point, know that you can always change that out. That's not a big deal. Tesla actually can do that. So it's also not like a huge cost. Let's go into Model X. I'm going to pass this one on to Brent because he owned a Model X for a really long time.
Model X has been an amazing car. I like to say it's probably the most complex consumer vehicle ever built.
Until Cybertruck.
Yeah, well, there again, now we got the Cybertruck. But the Model X, even though it's got a lot going on, is an amazing car, right? It's a great car for your family. It's a great car to get people in and out of the second row, elderly, accessing child seats in the second row, super easy. You get those Falcon Wing doors up and you can literally stand there and help elderly, disabled folks, children, child seats. So it's a super family car. It's a great family car for people with limited abilities oftentimes. Fantastic ride. I had a 2016. I had a first gen Model X. The first couple of years of Model X, they're figuring it out, right? Just like the 2012s, 2013 Model S's, they were figuring things out, right? There were a lot of things going on in those first couple of years as Tesla improved upon this brand new car that had never been built before. So if you own a 2016 or you're considering getting If you own a 2016, 2017, seriously consider getting XCare. Your vehicle, because it is a first gen, are somewhat prone to more claims with us. So we understand that, and we're here for you. If you are new to the market and you're looking at Model X for all the aforementioned reasons and some of your own, I would recommend at least a 2018, 2019 and forward. They really iterated greatly in that first couple of years. The 2018s and forward will probably be a better overall experience for you and your family. The one caveat I will put out here, and I don't think we touched on with the Model S's as well, is if getting high voltage battery coverage in your XCare is important to you, make sure that you get a 2017 or newer with less than 100,000 miles at your coverage start. And we do include high voltage battery coverage in your coverage. So if you're in the market and you're looking at things, just make sure it's a 2017 or newer with less than 100,000 miles. This year at December 31st, it will switch over to 2018s and newer and less than 100,000 miles. So if you're in the market this year, fantastic. If not, if you're thinking about hopping in at the beginning of next year, just make sure it's a 2018 and forward. Other than that, fantastic cars, lots going on with Model X, lots of moving parts, as you're well aware. Lots of different seating arrangements as well. The 5-seater, I like to jokingly call this the cargo van, right? This is the one where you only need 4 or 5 people to fit in the car, but you need a lot of cargo space. The nice thing about the 5-seater is the floor is lower. There's lots of room for cargo. There's no seats folded away. So if you do carry a lot of things, if you're a musician, if you carry a drum set and other things like that, a tuba, whatever, something really big that is going to need to be
cyclist.
The back. If you're a cyclist,
and you want to put it inside.
Yeah. I can put my bike in the back of one of those, no sweat. The 6-seater, fabulous family car, right? Kids can go in between the middle row to the back seats really simply. You don't have to move the seats out of the way for them to ingress and egress the back row. Very easy to put long items through the car by folding down the back row, and just like you could fit a surfboard in there, a full-length longboard in there, no sweat. Be careful, because if you hit the brakes and that board goes through your dash computer, XCare is not covering that, okay? So don't do that. But yeah, so it's very good from a cargo perspective. However, the 7-seater is a lot better for people who carry long cargo, long square kind of cargo, because when you fold back down the second and third rows, you have a long continuous flat surface from the back door, back tailgate, until the back of the driver and front passenger seat. So if your situation is you like to camp in your vehicles, they have camping mode in these cars, you can literally put an air mattress down there and comfortably sleep 2 adults in the back of a Model X. No joke. I'm 6'4", I can sleep in the back of a Model X. So these are all things to consider. If you are considering resale value and you don't need a 5-seater, I would probably avoid the 5-seater, just because resale on them is somewhat limited, because people want the flexibility of having more seats. But if you're going to buy it, roll the wheels off of it, you can get some great deals on a 5-seater, because of the fact that in the marketplace, they're a little bit harder to sell. So keep that in your calculus while you're looking at these cars. Mo?
One added thing here, the 6-seater, a lot of people with that with 2 kids love the 6-seater, because now they can't really touch each other or like fight with each other, because they're
he's on my side of the seat.
Yeah. So a lot of parents prefer the 6-seater literally because of that. Captain row seating is usually always better for resale, but as Brett mentioned, you can't fold the middle seats down. So
it's nice having a no man's land between the seats.
Yeah, great cars. A lot of engineering. So just some added detail here to understand the difference of what a 6-seater looks like. This is the reason why you can't fold these seats down. They're on these like single structure monorail pillars, right? So it's like Walt Disney engineered these seats or something like that. So these are these monorail-esque things that you can't really, they move up and forth so you can get to the third row, but they do not go down flat. So kind of think about that. 7-seater looks a little bit differently. They do all go down flat, and you can see the brace underneath. And the 5-seater does the same. Model 3. I had one of the very first Model 3s ever, which I'm very proud to say. I had one of the first, I think, like 50 or 60 cars that was delivered in 2017. I love these cars. I still love Model 3s a lot. I adore them. It's like a gadget. It's like having it's like having an iPhone that drives you around. I mean, it is very cool, and it feels less of a car, more of like a consumer electronic device that has a wild amount of functionality and like usability, because it actually takes you from point A to point B. It's very simplistic. The interiors of the Model 3, just one screen, seats, very minimalistic. There's not a lot going on. There's not a whole lot of components either, so they're a lot more reliable. They're made with reliability. At Tesla with Model S and X, the manufacturing process was different. We designed a car on paper. We knew what it was going to look like. Then we gave it to the engineers to go see, all right, now try to figure out how to build this and manufacture this at scale. That's not what we did with Model 3 and Model Y, where design and manufacturing and engineering worked side by side. So it was like, all right, we want to design a car, but we also need to make sure we know immediately that we can manufacture this at high volumes, because that's the point of this, right? So the whole entire how we went about it was fundamentally different compared to S and X. And that's what you see. This was, Elon timelines here, so take all this with grains of salt. But this was also supposed to be the first car that was designed for autopilot, like actual autonomy. That's the reason why it's so minimalistic and there's just one center screen. It was literally supposed to resemble what would it be like to like sit in a room and watch a TV while your car is just driving you. And that's kind of why the design structure of the inside, it looks the way that it does. And it hasn't left. So it's similar. It's just better now. There's a little bit more in the newer variations, and we're actually missing one now. The new Highland that came out, Dan, let's add that for the next. Even though it's not really used, so because that's a new car, but the price points are incredibly attractive. I was just saying earlier, Tesla just released a long-range rear-wheel drive Model 3. So if you're not in Midwest or Northeast, I would really consider getting this. If it falls in your budget, if your budget's 30 to 36 grand, I would say it's like $34,000 as a tax credit. You get a brand new Model 3 with 360 miles of range, and it's super quiet. So one thing, like I said this previously, but Tesla doesn't wait to do anything for a new calendar year. And it's not like other manufacturers. So every month, quarter, every like half of year, they're making these new iterations, and it's making the vehicles better and better and better. You really see that with the new Model 3. It's so quiet. It's so quiet. It's so smooth on the road. It just feels very nice. The doors sound different when you close them. They sound very like sturdy. Like everything is really perfected. And it's a huge difference between, say, like a 2017, 2018 Model 3, although those are also great cars. So they're just a little bit louder on the road. You have more conventional glass structure. Armored Tesla glass didn't come until I think 2018, 2019, or maybe 2019, 2020, something like that, where it made the interior cabin a lot quieter. They changed the suspension structure. So in 2017, 2018 Model 3s, even 2019, they were pretty rough, including Model Y. And then they made them softer and softer and softer. So the most recent Model 3s that you see, much softer suspension on the road than the older ones. Now, if you're a sports car driver and you like harder suspension, then do get a 2018. So this all comes down to personal preference here, right? So if you're like, well, I actually like a little bit harsher steering because I'm used to driving sports cars, look at a performance Model 3 of 2018. Great. Awesome vehicle. Like seriously, you're going to absolutely love it. If you want something that's more quiet and comfortable on your daily commute, look at a more newer Model 3, right? I would say look at, say, a 2021, a 2022. If you can afford and your budget is in the 30,000 mark, look at the new one, right? Honestly, because it's really attractable. So once again, bring us these questions that you're thinking about. We'll help answer them for you because we know the entire spectrum here. But let's talk about Model Y really briefly, because this one is pretty much the same. So there's not a whole lot of difference. Everything I just said about Model 3 applies for the Model Y. The only difference here is that just started a couple years later. So the first year of Model Y was 2020 as opposed to 2017 with the Model 3. But everything else is the same. It got quieter. The suspension got smoother. None of the other things actually differ at all. The range got better too. The efficiency got better. They have not released a new variation of the Model Y. So there's no like newest generation like there is with the Model 3 yet. When is that going to come out? Elon said it's not coming out this year. He could be lying. Who knows? We don't know. Bottom line is we don't know, but they do make the vehicles better. So like even if you're getting a new Model Y now, or say one that's like 6 months old or a year old, it's going to be significantly better than the one that was 2 years old, right? So because that is what they do. This is so crucially important. Snapshot this if you're shopping, seriously. Every single dealer you speak to, always assume that they don't know what the vehicle is they're trying to sell you.
And you'll
That
be
is a
9 out of 10 times.
yes, that is such an important rule of thumb. Always assume that the dealership has no idea what they are telling you. They will speak with confidence and they'll exert a level of ego, ignore it, and ask them for the information. And by that, we mean this. Software screen, bottom left on every single Tesla. Go to the software tab that you see right there. That gives you the VIN, that gives you the trim, that gives you the odometer. Additional, and also the autopilot structure. If it says full self-driving capability, that means it doesn't have it, right? That means it doesn't have it. That means it can have it.
Yeah.
You can buy the 7,000, is it $7,000 or $8,000? $8,000 to get it.
Yeah.
$6,000?
Yeah.
Sorry, they change this pricing frequently. Or $100 a month. Or you can pay $100 a month to get it and subscribe to it. This is how you know if it's full self-driving capable or if it actually has it. You can also go into additional vehicle information. I think we have another slide that shows that, right? Yeah. If you hit additional vehicle information, this is going to give you all the actual technical details.
Yes.
If you don't know what all this says, that's why we're here. Send it to us and we'll help you kind of decipher this, how to read it. These things have changed over time. I'm not going to go to the nitty-gritty details here because there's a lot to it, like the autopilot computer. It can't use the CCS adapter. Do you really need that if you have the Tesla supercharging? No, you really don't. HomeLink is important if you park in a garage. Honestly, the MyQ stuff kind of sucks. I don't like it. I prefer HomeLink. The infotainment processor, that is the actual the chip that's inside the vehicle, that has changed, went from Intel to AMD, which were much like gaming processors that are later on in life. And then the motor types, all right, if there's a rear motor, front motor, if it's dual motor. So this is where you get the specifics. This is so important. We cannot stress this enough. I can't tell you how many times I've spoken to people like, but the dealer told me this. Well, they're wrong. And, you know, and we're not going to assume that they're lying to you. Maybe they are. Maybe they're not. Not all dealers are the same. We work with some really good dealers out there that actually care to learn, and they care to teach their people because they care about the customer and they care about making sure that there's product knowledge and education that's being relayed to the customer. And we can always refer people over to you, refer you over to those specific dealers. But not all dealers are the same, especially in this industry and especially in this space. So never assume that what they're telling you is accurate or real.
Exactly.
And it's not always malicious either. I mean, it's
Right.
just simply, it's complex, as you've seen through all the slides here. I had a great example this morning where someone I've been working with for several weeks had a dealer tell them that a vehicle did not have full self-driving. He just took delivery this morning and it was active. The previous buyer paid for it. So naturally that worked out in his favor, but always ask.
Yeah.
None of us are going to feel like we're put out of the way to answer your questions.
Absolutely.
Yeah. As you can tell by this whole entire thing, we're not really speaking about our products. We don't sell inventory. So we're really just trying to do this for you. We'll talk about a product at the end. But right now we're going to focus on the vehicles. So upgrades. We have autopilot. We have enhanced autopilot. We have full self-driving. We have unlimited charging. What is all this? Autopilot comes on the base of every Tesla. In the Ford world, you have co-pilot assist, which is on the higher level trims. You have to make sure that option was selected. What is the name of the Mercedes one? I don't know the name. I'm hitting a blank, but they also have one. it's not Super Cruise because that's
I'll go super foreign.
yeah. So but they have one too. Ford has Drive Pilot. Okay, Drive Pilot. Ford has the co-pilot assist. They also have Blue Cruise, which is a little bit older. I think they removed that to swap it out with the with co-pilot assist. And then GM has Super Cruise, which is not even in all their cars. So be very particular if you're looking for honestly, if you're looking for any sort of autonomous driving and safety features, I would just go with Tesla. No one's really even close to Tesla in this regard. They're not even on the same football. They're on the same field. Like, I mean, they're playing a whole different game. They're not even in the same league. It's just entirely different. So, and we don't take that lightly, especially with some of these new updates. It's wild. It's wild how much this car is just actually driving you everywhere. City streets, stoplights, pedestrian crossings, like everything. It's insane. Now that's with full self-driving. Every car comes base autopilot. What does that mean? Highway driving. That's what that means. Highway driving. You're on the highway, flip it on. You're good. You're good until you either need to change lanes or exit. I mean, you're just going. And it's really solid. I mean, you essentially eliminate all highway driving in traffic or not, or otherwise, in the base autopilot, which is included, you don't have to pay for, as long as it is at least a 2016 or 20, technically 2015, but different autopilot technology, which we would probably recommend 2016 moving forward. Then there's enhanced autopilot. This is like a bridge between base autopilot comes with it and full self-driving. What this does is it'll change lanes for you, right? So you can just turn on the signal and it moves over to the next lane when it's safe. And it's really good at it. It also exits for you. It also can do self-park and auto park and stuff like that, where the base autopilot doesn't do that. The base is just the highway driving. So this is all the highway driving, along with some added cool benefits that you get with enhanced autopilot. I don't. Anyone know what the cost is right now to upgrade to enhanced autopilot? Dan,
It's like $2,000.
$2,000. So if you have a car that has the base autopilot, you can get enhanced autopilot for roughly a couple $1,000s. That'll all be in your Tesla app after you take ownership. And then there's full self-driving capability. There are some hardware limitations on this, so you do have to make sure and check, like on that slide before, it states which autopilot computer the vehicle does have. So there might be a hardware limitation here, but if you're looking to make sure you get a car with full self-driving, got to make sure it has the right hardware, and you got to make sure it's been activated, or else you're going to have to pay $1,000 for the hardware and then $8,000 for the software. So that's a huge budget difference. If you're thinking it has it and it doesn't, now you're $9,000 away from actually obtaining.
Exactly.
Or you could pay $100 a month, but you still need the hardware. You still need the computer on the vehicle. But this is honestly amazing. If you're taking a lot of road trips, once you have one of these, you're not driving on road trips anymore. Your car is like your personal train, like trolley. Like you're just sitting in it and it's just taking you from point A to point B. That's really what's happening. It's pretty amazing. Talking about road trips, supercharging. In 2014 to 2016, that's when, well, actually, unlimited supercharging was 2012 all the way up to 2016, technically. Not 2014, 2012 to 2016. That's when you could possibly have unlimited supercharging. The first Model S and Model X deliveries came with unlimited supercharging for the life of the vehicle. If at any point, if that vehicle went back into Tesla inventory after that, like late 2016 on, then, or 2017 on, somewhere around that timeline, then they removed the unlimited free supercharging and now it's pay per use. So this is something you can see under that additional vehicle information tab that we just showed you previously. Once again, that's why this is so important, because these are huge value differences. If you take a lot of road trips, you know, it's like every charge is, depending on where you live in the country, because the rates are all different, but it could be anywhere between $15 to $30 to fully charge charge the car at a supercharger when you're on the road trip at each stop, which you're really doing like one every, like, say 500 miles or something. So that, just take that in consideration. If you're trying to drive for Uber, which we also see a lot of customers that are trying to drive for Uber, so you got to do a lot of supercharger stops throughout the middle of the day. This taps into your margins, right? This taps into your overhead. So obviously free is always better. But you're going to have older cars, and it had to have stayed in that kind of like ownership model. It could have never been traded to Tesla. Tesla could have never bought it at any point of time, or else they removed it. So the checking of that additional vehicle information tab is so important, because this is how you know whether or not it has it. Otherwise, there's no way of knowing. Hardware limitations, like we talked. Well, I guess we just talked about that, right? But I want to let's just talk about the hardware limitation. Let's go back. I want to talk about the hardware limitation on supercharging real quick. So if you're living, the heat pump is important if you live in the Northeast or in Chicago or in the Midwest area. The heat pump had a drastic range difference during the winter. It's way more efficient with a heat pump than without. Once again, where is this? Additional vehicle information. That's where you see if it has a heat pump or not. But if you live in the Midwest or the Pacific Northeast, I would definitely make sure you have a vehicle with a heat pump. I mean, winter driving is going to be a huge difference in experience. DAS suspension's cool. That's the same as just air suspension, which is like in any other car. The hardware limitation on supercharging, if you get an older vehicle, 2012 to 2013, 2014, they're limited to 90 kilowatts. Then they get up to like 150 a couple years after that. And then eventually in 2018, they get into the 250 realm. So once again, how do you know? I believe that's also under additional vehicle information, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe. Is that under additional vehicle information? The hardware, the DC to DC converter limitation for DC supercharging? That is not. That is weird. Why is that not under the additional vehicle information? It should. Someone should send a note to Tesla. I think I'll make sure that a couple people know about that. I don't know why that's not in there.
So
I don't know why that's not in there.
Tweet Elon.
Yeah. But anyway, we can at least give you some guidance if it does or doesn't, right? Like, so if you send it to us, we can at least be able to help decipher that. Brett, you take this one away.
All right, so
Okay.
let's take a look here. Yeah, so like I alluded to earlier, if possible, stick with newer Model X's, just because first gens are a little bit dodgy. If you have one, get XCare, like after this presentation. If charging quickly is important to you, if you road trip a lot, the aforementioned Uber drivers, right? The pre-19 S and X's charge at a slower rate. So if you need to charge and go. If time is money for you, get a 2020 or newer S or X for faster charging. Yellowing on the touchscreen, it's a cosmetic issue around the edge of the touchscreen where sometimes you'll get like a yellow border. It doesn't affect the use of the touchscreen, although it's rather unattractive. Tesla has a bolt-on UV light that they can basically take care of that with an overnight UV light treatment of it. But if the cosmetics of the screen are very important to you, as a lot of people they are, make sure that the around the touch screen doesn't have like a yellowed border. Verify the trim level. Don't trust the listings. So incredibly important. There are well-meaning people out there, and there are just people that will lie to you and sell you a car. But at the end of the day, make sure to verify the trim level in the software screen. It's the quickest picture you can have somebody take. Just tell the salesman, walk out to the car, click the car icon, lower left, click the software tab. Please take a picture of that screen. Now scroll down, take a picture of the rest of the screen. Now hit additional information. Done deal. 3 pictures, and you can save yourself a world of heartache, especially if you are buying from a remote dealer and they are shipping the car to you. Because if they're shipping the car to you from another state, you are going to have all kinds of issues in your life trying to get them to fix something once it's to you, trying to get them to compensate you if it was improperly referenced or recommended to you. So do yourself a huge favor. If you are getting this car from another state, make sure to verify everything you possibly can. Everybody that's on this show today, that's visiting, everybody that's registered for this show is also going to get a used car checklist, something that you can take with you, or something that you can communicate to the people on distant end and say, check these things for me and ensure me that all these things are as they should be, right? outstanding supercharger payments. I have heard of people actually getting charged for supercharging payments that had not been fully collected from the old owner. It could be a lot, it could be a little, but it's definitely going to be a hassle. So make sure that outstanding supercharging payments are resolved on the vehicle. I really honestly don't know how one would do that. Could somebody elucidate that for me?
Okay, yeah. So you on the screen, it'll actually show if there are any outstanding payments, and it'll say that supercharging is unavailable. So you would have to contact Tesla. That's something that presumably you would try to work out with the dealership just
What
to make
screen
sure
would that
if they
be
have
on?
it under their ownership that they can, resolve those payments before you actually take ownership of it.
The
What
battery,
screen would
the
that be
the
on?
bat the battery icon. So whenever you hit the battery icon or you hit the car controls and you hit charging, that screen, because that screen will show your last charging session, how
Right
much
on.
it costs, and then you can see it there.
Fantastic. Check tires. My God, people, these are EVs. These things eat tires. They just do. They're high torque vehicles. They're heavy vehicles. They do go through tires. So check the tires. Make sure you've got at least 5, 6, 30 seconds of tread. Cheap little tire gauge you can get at any auto parts store. Stick it in the tread in the middle of the tire. Check to make sure that you've got sufficient tread. If you don't have at least 5, 30 seconds, negotiate with the dealer for new tires or get it off the price of the car, one or the other, because these tires can be hundreds of dollars each. Done deal.
It might be worth also, if you're trying to look at a Model S or an X, an older one, have them take a picture of the entire width of the tire from underneath the car, because a lot of times there's inner wear. So they'll use the tread depth on the outer edge of the tire, and you're not gonna, it'll look like it's fine, but the inside of the tire is like down to the wire, and that means you gotta swap them out. These vehicles had a lot of camber issues. They go out to negative camber. That means that the wheels are a little bit like this because of the air suspension it lowers, and just other reasons. So because the cars are significantly heavier and it just weighs down the suspension a lot. So some of that has been fixed with 3 and Y. You're probably not going to have any issues with that in 3 and Y. S and X, you probably will with air suspension. As it sits lower on highway speeds, the wheels go out like this. You're getting a lot of wear on the inside. So take that in consideration too. Model S, the 21-inch wheels on my Model S were $1,000 each on the rear. So like, just so you understand how expensive they are. Yeah, it is important.
Consider MCU upgrade. Okay, MCU upgrade. The older MCUs, the first generation media control unit, which is the large computer screen in the center of the console. The MCUs in the earlier ones were known as MCU1. They had a memory chip inside them that could rapidly become full. Once that memory chip becomes full, the responsiveness of the touchscreen, the updating of the navigation map as you're using it would become slower and slower. One way to get around that is to get rid of all the navigation, prior navigation destinations that you have in your Navi. That will free up a lot of space. Also, leave the web browser on Tesla.com. It is a very low refreshing page. Every time a web page refreshes, it uses memory on the chip on the first gens. So if you can leave your infotainment system on Tesla.com and get rid of all the old navigation addresses that you have in there from prior trips, that will free up a lot of space on that chip. Worst comes to worst, I mean, MCUs get old, just like every other electronic part of this car. We do replace the MCU if it ceases to function properly. But if you like a faster experience with navigation maps and internet and everything, do consider upgrading if you have a first gen MCU. Lastly, consider range enhancements, upgraded center console. I'm not really conversant with that, but I will say this: the newer the Tesla, the faster the tech, the faster the computers, the faster the charging, the faster everything. If a newer Tesla is not within the budget, again, make sure that you're 2017 or newer with less than 100,000 miles if covering the high voltage battery is important to you.
I want to sort of just chime in. I know we're talking a lot about Tesla here. The reason why we're doing that is because there's a vast amount of they're older. So there's way more cars in used vehicle inventory. Are we saying that non-Teslas are bad vehicles? Absolutely not, right? So we love Rivians. We've owned them too. I'm a big fan of Lucid. Obviously, those are a much different price point of vehicles. But if you're looking at like a Hyundai or a Kia, like if you're looking at an EV6, there's a lot of bang for your buck right now.
EV6 is an awesome car, by the way. I was in one for the first time on a trip recently. Fabulous car.
Yeah, and you can get a 2-year-old EV6 with 30,000 miles for like $23,000. They go roughly 310 miles on a range. They're remarkable. They're really good. Can they use the Tesla supercharger network? No. So you do have to keep that in mind if you plan on leaving town. If you're just talking around the city and I got a Suburban when I take long road trips, then that doesn't really matter. But those are also really amazing vehicles. The reason why we don't talk about them is because for most people have one car, and you want that one car to do everything that you need to do, like your last car did. And road trips is one of those things. We take a lot of road trips. That's really the only reason. Tesla, Ford, Rivian, no problem, right? So that's the reason why. But we also we cover a lot of everybody. So we are battery electric vehicle specialists. So we know them all. We're not limited to just one of us the other. But we will care if you come to us with one of those. We're going to ask you a lot about how do you intend on using the vehicle, because that's what's really going to be really important. Is what does your daily process look like? How do you actually use this? How are you planning on using this car? Where we don't want to educate you in a direction where we don't want you just to buy an EV just to buy an EV, and you have expectations of driving from Houston to Dallas all the time, or New York to, like, say, Boston or something like that, right? So, and it's like, well, what do I do whenever I get there? That's the complicated part. So we're going to ask a lot of questions like, how do you intend on using the car? What's the size of your family? These types of questions. We want to make sure that you're making the right decision, the best decision, based off of your particular use case, and not just because someone wants to sell you something. As promised, I'm gonna brush through this because the point of this entire EV buyers hacks and tips is to learn a little bit about some of the older EVs out there, and so you understand kind of our background, our opinions behind them. When you're shopping for an EV, we have a lot of people, I would say 10, 15, 20%, 10 to 20% of our customers that come to us are trying to buy an electric vehicles, right? So they don't actually own one quite yet. And they come out to us because we have the warranty, right? It's like, well, I don't want to buy a used car without the warranty. That's why we have an online experience that's on our website. If you go to xcare.com, you will go to our website and you can see a little tool. You put in the vehicle information, what state you're in, and it'll show you the terms and how many miles you drive a year. That's important because that could change which terms you're going to see. And it'll show you all the terms that we have and pricing. You don't have to give us your personal contact information before seeing our pricing. Use this to your advantage. Use this as a tool whenever you're going and you're buying a car. Use this as part of your negotiation tactic, right? It was like, well, I could only buy this if at this price point. So this is where that's really, really important. If you want to make it easier to buy, we do have a payment plan variation. 20% down up front, 11 equal payments until it's complete. 1 year. So just 1 year. That down payment accounts for the first month payment, 11 equal payments, and then it's all completed. If you ever wanted to sell the car to another private individual, you could transfer it for a $50 fee. You transfer. You got to let us know so we can switch all the names and everything for our claims team so they know we know who we're talking to. But you can transfer it over and you can negotiate how much that costs and that value is in your deal. A lot of people make money off of XCare whenever they sell it and they transfer it with the vehicle. If you try to sell it to a dealer, you can't transfer it to a dealer, so you can cancel it and get a prorated refund for whatever's unused. So we look at what is the higher the two, the mileage or the time, and whatever's unused minus any claims, we give you your money back. No harm, no foul. So we always tell everybody, it's like, well, I might be owning this car for another 6 years, maybe 3 though. I don't know. Opt for the 6. Just buy the coverage for as long as the highest ideal timeline of when you think you're going to own the car. And even if you own it for 3 years, cancel the warranty, get the money back for whatever you didn't use. There's really no harm, no foul. That's how we look at everything. And you can come to us before you sell the car. Hey, I need a cancellation quote. I don't know what I want to do. Yes, we'll give you the number. So at least that way you can make, which avenue do I want to go with? Do I want to sell it privately? And as long as I can get more than this amount, I'm better off if I sell it with the car, or I can just cancel it. Totally up to you. And we'll even help guide you, right? And we'll kind of talk through the situation give you what we would do. So there is a payment plan. It makes it easier to purchase. And an example, there's no fees, there's no interest, there's no credit check in our payment plan. It's literally just an easier way to buy it. Or you can just use your credit card and buy it all up front. If you're a points-driven person like myself, that's the best way possible because now you get a bunch of points up front, or you could do the payment plan. We benchmarked the extended service agreement from Tesla. So we cover batteries, drive units, if it falls into a certain eligibility parameter. Once again, it all comes down to how old the vehicle is. The older the car, the higher the mileage, the higher the cost of the warranty. Our pricing is based on a matrix, so always keep that in mind. So if you get maybe an older car with low miles, we probably wouldn't recommend that. EVs require a healthy amount of charging and usage in order for them to maintain a battery health. So if you see like a 6-year-old car with 20,000 miles, I would probably tell you do not buy that. That battery might crap out because it hasn't been used and charged appropriately as designed. We see that a lot, unfortunately. It's like, I got a great deal, 7-year-old car, less than 30,000 miles. 3 months later, battery just failed on me. Now I owe $12,000. That wasn't the right move. We tell people this because it's important to know. 6-year-old car's been driven 15,000 miles a year. That's a healthy car. That battery will probably last a really, really, really long time because it's been used, it's been charged, right? The cycles are there. So these cars are meant to be driven, they're meant to be used, they're meant to be charged. Keep that in mind. Once again, if you're looking at a few cars, use our tool, ping us, get in contact with one of us. We're going to just tell you what we think. We have no incentive whether you go with one vehicle versus the other. We are just here to give you the best and most educated opinion and objective reality that we have seen and been through now for over 13 years in this space, so you can make the right decision. And why is that important to us? Because we firmly believe that the first experience in an EV can be the determinant mark for if you're ever going to own another one. If your first experience was bad, are you going to buy another EV as your second car? Probably not. And to be honest, should you? Probably not, if your first experience was bad. So we're here to make sure that your first experience is good, not to sell you, but to educate and make sure that we're giving you the right level set of information so you know exactly expectations, so you know exactly what you're getting yourself into. These are amazing cars. They can totally replace your gas car. They absolutely can. There's just a couple expectation points so you know what to do, and then you're great, and life is glorious. And unfortunately, a lot of dealers don't focus on that. That is why we're here. So with that, thank you all for joining. We're going to send this recording out to everyone who came here or who couldn't make it, unfortunately, because it's a Saturday and we're the nutcase nerdy people who love to talk about this. But we will do that. We're going to send this out to everybody. If you have any questions about cars you're looking at, just ping us. That's why we're here. If you want to know what the cost of the warranties are for the cars you're looking at, just use our tool. You don't have to get in contact with anybody yet. You only do that when you feel like you're a little bit further down the funnel. Or if you have some questions, we're just here. We're a tool and a resource for you. But if you need anything at all, let us know. We are here at your disposal. Brent, Dan, Carrie, any last words?
Just thanks for joining us this morning. Appreciate everybody that's been a part of this today. And like Malad said, we're here to serve. We're here to make sure that you have the best experience possible. And we look forward to connecting with you and helping you in your journey. Have a great day, y'all.
Thanks, everybody.